At 64 years old, Wayne Gretzky should be celebrating a career that rewrote the hockey record books, but instead he's facing accusations of being a traitor to his own country. The man once called the Great One has somehow managed to destroy his own legacy through a series of devastating controversies that have left Canadian fans questioning everything they thought they knew about their former hero. The most recent blow came during the Four Nations Face-Off final, where Gretzky served as Team Canada's honorary captain, but shocked everyone by entering the ice from the United States bench instead of the Canadian side. As if that wasn't insulting enough to his home country, he was caught on camera giving enthusiastic thumbs-up gestures to American players while completely ignoring the Canadian team. While his American counterpart Mike Eruzione proudly wore his country's colors, Gretzky chose to dress in a plain blue suit, showing no visible pride in representing Canada. This wasn't just a simple mistake. This was the culmination of years of questionable loyalty decisions that have progressively alienated the very fans who once worshipped him. His close ties to former President Donald Trump, including his attendance at Trump's inauguration and his public support, have fueled growing accusations that Gretzky is now more aligned with American interests than Canadian pride. Many Canadians see this as the final betrayal from someone who was supposed to represent their national identity on the world stage. But this pattern of disappointing his countrymen actually started decades ago with what many consider the most traumatic event in Canadian sports history. On August 9, 1988, the unthinkable happened when Gretzky was traded from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings. This wasn't just any trade. This single transaction sent an entire nation into mourning and was viewed as the ultimate betrayal by their national hero. The truth behind this trade reveals just how ugly professional sports can really get. The deal wasn't born from hockey strategy or team building. Instead, it was the desperate result of financial fraud and corruption. Oilers owner Peter Pocklington was drowning in debt from his failing business empire, including a debt-ridden meatpacking plant, crippled by high interest rates and labor disputes. Facing bankruptcy charges later in his life, Pocklington finally admitted the truth. He had no choice but to trade Gretzky because he simply couldn't afford to keep him, stating he knew he would get nothing for him in the free market. What makes this even more disturbing is that the Kings owner Bruce McNall, the man who orchestrated this massive deal, was later revealed to be a corrupt businessman who didn't actually possess the $15 million in cash required for the trade. McNall would eventually be convicted of bank fraud and conspiracy, serving 3 years in prison for his crimes. Yet even after learning about McNall's fraudulent dealings, Gretzky consistently defended and covered for him, even years later. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Pocklington received death threats and was burned in effigy by angry fans. Gretzky himself was called a traitor by his own countrymen for leaving. His new American wife, Janet Jones, was unfairly branded as hockey's Yoko Ono, with many Canadians believing she was the reason for the move. The emotional devastation was so intense that it became a political issue, discussed in the Canadian Parliament with attempts made to declare Gretzky a national treasure to prevent his departure to the United States. A prominent Edmonton newspaper captured the national mood with their famous headline, 99 Tears. But Gretzky's problems were just getting started. After retiring as a player, he took on the role of head coach for the Phoenix Coyotes from 2005 to 2009. And this career move proved to be a rare but spectacular failure in his otherwise successful journey. Over 4 seasons, the Coyotes compiled a disappointing record of 143 wins, 161 losses, and 24 ties. Most critically, the team failed to qualify for the playoffs during his entire tenure. Subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're enjoying this deep dive into how legends can fall from grace. And let me know in the comments which moment you think was the most damaging to Gretzky's reputation. Was it the trade, the coaching failure, or something else entirely? Experts pointed to several key factors behind his coaching failure. Unlike most legendary players who transitioned to coaching, Gretzky had no prior coaching experience in junior or minor leagues. The old saying that great players don't always translate into great coaches became painfully relevant in his case. While his on-ice success was founded on an intuitive, almost inexplicable mastery of the game, these were skills he simply couldn't communicate or teach to others. He couldn't bridge the gap between his own genius and the more methodical, structured approach required for effective coaching. The Coyotes franchise also suffered from chronic financial problems and unstable ownership issues that prevented the team from acquiring the talent needed to compete with the league's elite. But even accounting for these organizational problems, Gretzky's complete inability to guide his team to even a single playoff appearance stands as a glaring failure that tarnished his reputation as a winner. Then came the scandal that truly tested his public image and showed how quickly a legend's reputation can crumble. In 2006, Gretzky and his family became entangled in a major controversy when an illegal nationwide sports betting ring, dubbed Operation Slapshot, was uncovered. The investigation revealed that his wife Janet Jones was allegedly a key participant in the ring, which handled over $1.7 million in bets on professional and college football and basketball. Even more troubling, the investigation hinted at connections to organized crime in Philadelphia and southern New Jersey. Gretzky's public response was to staunchly defend his wife and deny his own involvement, telling reporters he wasn't involved, wasn't going to be involved, and had never been involved. His wife's spokesperson also publicly denied she ever placed bets on his behalf. However, these public denials became complicated when law enforcement sources reported that Gretzky was recorded on a wiretap discussing how his wife could avoid being implicated in the scandal. While Gretzky was never formally charged with any crimes, the revelation placed him at the center of a media storm that created significant public relations challenges for both him and the NHL, which was still recovering from a season-long lockout. This incident proved that even a figure of Gretzky's stature wasn't immune to having his reputation permanently stained by proximity to controversy, even without direct criminal culpability. The gambling scandal demonstrated a harsh reality about public figures. Their brands and legacies are inextricably linked to the actions of their closest associates, creating risks they cannot fully control or mitigate. For someone who had built his entire post-playing career on his pristine image, this scandal represented a significant crack in his carefully constructed public persona. These controversies reveal a troubling pattern in Gretzky's post-playing career. Each incident has progressively chipped away at the untouchable legend status he once enjoyed. The recent criticism about his perceived lack of patriotism isn't happening in isolation. It's the latest chapter in a decades-long story of a hero who has repeatedly disappointed the very people who once celebrated him most. The criticism directed at Gretzky today reflects what experts call a larger Canadian identity crisis in hockey. The game's landscape has changed dramatically since his era, with the NHL now reflecting a broader, more global identity and the rise of international stars. As Canada struggles to consistently dominate on the world stage, their former symbol of hockey supremacy has become a target for national frustration and feelings of betrayal. Despite maintaining a $250 million business empire built on investments and endorsement deals, and despite his charitable work through various foundations, Gretzky's legacy remains deeply complicated. His brand may have successfully transcended national sentiment from a commercial standpoint, but the emotional connection with his home country continues to deteriorate. What makes Gretzky's downfall even more painful is understanding just how dominant he once was on the ice. His statistical achievements were so overwhelming that they seemed impossible to tarnish. He remains the NHL's all-time leader in regular season goals with 894, assists with 1,963, and points with 2,857. His assist total alone surpasses the career point total of any other player in NHL history. He's the only player to ever reach the monumental milestones of 2,000 and 3,000 combined points, as well as 1,000 combined goals and 2,000 combined assists. His dominance wasn't just about raw numbers, it was about his cerebral approach to the game. He wasn't the flashiest skater, but he was a tactical innovator whose primary weapon was his mind. His famous positioning behind the opponent's net, known as Gretzky's office, allowed him to dictate games with unparalleled vision and precision. He could thread perfect passes without even looking, making plays that seemed to defy logic. Even more impressive was his explanation of these abilities. What appeared to be supernatural hockey sense was actually the result of relentless study and practice. He compared his dedication to that of a medical student, explaining that his deep understanding of the game's dynamics was a learned skill developed through countless hours of preparation with his father Walter at their backyard rink, nicknamed the Wally Coliseum. This makes his post-retirement failures all the more shocking. How does someone who understood the game so completely fail so spectacularly as a coach? The answer reveals the harsh truth that individual genius doesn't automatically translate into leadership ability. Gretzky's intuitive understanding of hockey was so personal and instinctive that he couldn't break it down into teachable concepts for his players. The man who once held 61 NHL records and was immediately inducted into the Hall of Fame has somehow managed to transform from beloved national hero into a controversial figure who draws more criticism than praise from many of his former supporters. His journey from the great one to someone labeled a traitor by his own countrymen represents one of the most dramatic falls from grace in sports history. What do you think? Has Gretzky truly destroyed his own legacy, or are these controversies just the price of remaining relevant in today's polarized world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into how sports legends rise and fall.